and see, I zoomed in, so it's kind of shoddy footage, but you just see all the panes of glass just ripped and smashed. And you see the lights right there they had set up so they could work at night. It was getting close to nighttime. I'd say this footage was around 6:30 at night, 6:30 in the afternoon. But you see people there watching and taking pictures anyway. You had to be really careful when you brought your camera down, because if you were close enough for the authorities to see you, whether it was police, even army officials, they would confiscate your camera and not give it back. They just took them away from people. So I had to be kind of farther away, whereas we could get within a 2 to 3 block radius. The public could get within that amount of space, but I had to step back a block from this and take footage from a block further, just so I could take the footage, because otherwise my camera might have been confiscated, and I didn't want that to happen. This is just a block further away, and as you can see, this is like a business district, and the buildings were just filmed with this dust that swooped through the the streets after when the buildings collapsed, and everything had a film over it. The dust it came off the buildings and particles were flying through the air. This is a shoe store. Now the glass panels were closed, and you can see how the dust just sifted through the cracks in the door and just inundated the store with this dust. Look at the shoes right here. Let me zoom in. See the dust in the glass and the dust in the shoes? I mean, and the doors were closed to this building, and that's how much dust got in. So, I mean, you can just think of how bad it must have been on September 11th, during that morning when both towers collapsed and the mail's still sitting there. No one wants to touch mail because of the anthrax scare later on. And here's just more footage. Now, what you're looking at right now is one of the Twin Towers. That's what remains of the buildings of the Twin Towers. I'm not sure what tower was, the North or the South Tower, but that's the bottom of it right there. And that's basically all that I could see, and that's basically all I was told there was left. And the things just buckled. Here's another shot from another view, more of a corner of the building, I guess. And they ended up tearing these walls down a few days after I was there. But so that's all that remains of the World Trade Center at that time. And again, this is September 28th, 29th. A lot of people came down to look at it. I mean, you can see the crowds gathering. September 13th. Now this is Broadway at night. You saw it during the day. This is at night. And now it is desolate because they are not letting anybody down past 14th Street without an ID. Or you have to prove that you live past 14th Street. So when I crossed this line of state troopers like you're looking at right now, I had to bring my NYU ID card. If I didn't have that, I was not getting back to the dorm. And look at this, they had state troopers, they had army officials. I mean, they were really strict at who they were letting in. They checked individuals and made sure you had an ID. Union Square, this is later on during that night, they had a lot of people hanging around in Union Square. It was a memorial for those who had died in the September 11th attacks. I threw a buck to these people who were playing. Who knows what they did with the money, I'm not sure. It was really crowded that night. A lot of people were there lighting candles, writing messages. You see this piece of paper that was rolled across? They had hundreds of these pieces of paper, and people wrote messages on them. And people had debates. I mean, look at the crowd around these two people. These guys were debating what were the implications of September 11th. And there's one thing I've learned about being in New York and New York University. People love to debate. Even if they don't know what they're talking about, they will debate it anyway. So that's what these guys are doing right here. And everyone's listening in, and I'm filming it, so this goes to show that people actually like that kind of stuff. Someone constructed this monument, which is a candle with, instead of a flame, a piece of metal shaped as a flame. And there's a lot of, it says right here, to the victims of the terrorist attacks, and a lot of candles and flowers are placed down, and messages, unite with light, candlelight vigil, and a lot of candles. And like I said, it was crowded. I'd say they were good. At this time, probably close to even 1,000 people there in Union Square Park. This is right on 14th Street. It's 4 blocks north of where I live. And even we got into the patriotic spirit. That's my flag, and that's our dorm room. And as you saw the date in the corner of the screen, it's September 13th. And we live on the 3rd floor in Brittany. And that's the street. This is Washington Square Park. There are a lot of flowers hanging from the fence and messages that people left there. And there's the arch for NYU. And lastly, this happened recently. I think this was the beginning of November. They had a mass for one of the fallen policemen. I think his last name was Perry. I'm not sure. I forget. But hundreds of police officers were there. I'd say close to 1,000. They lined up and they had a big processional for the man who had died. And they had the color guard there. They played the bagpipes, the national anthem.
That's about all the footage I have pertaining to September 11th. What you have seen is what I experienced and what I will remember.